guys, we what about books and other things? We are. I like that name, Herdy. Book. What about books and other things? Yeah.
Don't start.
The I was going through when I was in the gym on the treadmill. I was going back through a little bit from what we went over very rapidly last week, and that at number 14, I think this is where we ended, and actually in part 2, and he says the pipe is the life. Of course, he's talking about the pipeline. And the talk with people, there's a simple truth. The more people you talk with, the more you sell. The bad news is that in volatile times, fewer people are buying. In sales, you get paid to talk to people. Get comfortable with interrupting people and having a conversation. During a crisis, nothing is more important. Nothing. And then he.
Dan, what page are you on?
I was on page. Moving into page. I was on page 49 and 50. And then he gives a lot of this next bit through here is out of his book, Fanatical Prospector, Fanatical Prospecting. I think, Paul, you have that book. Who else has that book? No, Austin has it. Herdy has it. I was talking to somebody yesterday. Today's Tuesday. I was yesterday, and they're real busy, but they're noticing that their inbound, just people calling, has drastically dropped the past 2 weeks. And I said, well, how's your pipeline? And he said, well, it's pretty good. And I said, with those inbound calls, what concerns you about it? And we talked about that. And I said, you might need to speed up your outbound calls. Your outbound, and he has been networking since before COVID. And so one of those has been able to carry through COVID and still going strong. There's a financial advisor out in Lakeway that I know. He's a real high level guy, and he came here about almost 20 years ago, and one of those door knockers. And to this day, if he was glad they were able to start going back knocking doors, because he has kind of a point system based on the type of phone calls that come into his office. He has 2 assistants that, based upon those calls coming in, if they start dropping below a certain point, he knows he needs to go out and start prospecting, start going door to door again to pick those calls back up. And so chapter 15 on page 51, become a ruthless, fanatical prospector. Don't wait till your pipeline is empty. Don't whine like a baby about not having enough leads. Austin reminded me of our conversation about somebody this morning.
So Danny, so if you ever want to watch that about complaining about leads, I just go back and recommend you watch that movie with Alec Baldwin, Always Be Closing, with Lemon and those guys in the coffee room itself. So Sliding to Homes, right? That's the best movie. That scene will get you every time.
Is that the one where they're selling siding?
Yeah. Always be closing.
Always be closing. Always be closing.
And the guy goes to get coffee, and he goes, "Coffee's for closers. Sit down."
Get moving. Take responsibility.
Anyhow, sorry about that.
That's good. That's
like
good.
A brick.
That's good. Austin's got somebody that was just that was. He had.
I'll tell you about the conversation I had with him this afternoon, because he called me again, and gosh, I said, no, I'm not going to do that, and I have to go.
Yeah. The brutal truth is the number one reason for failure in sales is an empty pipeline. The root cause of an empty pipeline is a failure to consistently prospect every day. I wonder what some salespeople do all day, every day, when they don't have any deliverables to deliver. Anyway, prospect day and night, anywhere. Always be on the hunt for your next sale. Carry around a pocket full of business cards. Strike up a conversation with strangers in line to get coffee, elevators, planes, trains, and everywhere. Ask people where they work, what they do, who makes decisions in the company. Knock on doors, make phone calls, send text, emails. Also, there's some really good stuff in here around our stop wasting handshake stuff. Nothing new, just some good thoughts about it. Love this. You can't keep a squirrel on the ground. Chapter 16, and he relates it to squirrels. I mean, they're going to get to the bird seed.
I like that part a lot. This is Mike. My video's not working. Sorry.
Hey, Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm good.
Yeah, and I like this. You can't keep a squirrel on the ground. The difference between those who fail in a crisis and those who survive and thrive is that when they are knocked down, bruised, battered, they refuse to stay down. Just like those squirrels, they get back up, dust themselves off, and run headlong back into the game. Number 17, persistence always finds a way to win. Anybody on any of this? What are y'all thinking?
Yeah, so Danny, on the go back to the just wrote down, you asked what salespeople did all day long.
Yeah.
When they're not having deliverables. That goes back to our habit book, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It sure does.
Danny, if I can share a brief story.
Sure.
When I worked for Coopers and Librand, we weren't selling per se, but we were auditors at that time. And if someone walked into a manager and said, I don't have client work right now, you know what their response was? This is a vacation day for you. Think that worked the next day? Yes, they did. That is all it took. Okay, you're on vacation. There was always work.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
It was effective.
Like they just.
There's another chapter I read just a few minutes ago. I can't remember exactly what number it was. They talked about the lady and her target market audience was professional sports. And for some reason it dried up and she shifted to a different market. So, this isn't the old cliche of you got one hammer and one nail and you're always beating that one nail. You need to be intelligent and analytical about what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, that's the truth. He talks here in chapter 17 about persistence. And some lady from T-Mobile called him and just kept following through, would send him videos and text and emails over, I guess, a pretty good period of time. And till finally, after 14, and finally he switched carriers and to T-Mobile for Business. And she didn't let his, what was the statement that he made? I have much bigger priorities. Call me back when all this is over.
Yep, she kept on and on and on.
Yeah. And
I fed them this morning.
What was that?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Then go where the money is. I think, that's your story. I think, Gary, go where the money is, the Sutton principle. And during COVID, all the professional sports died a quick and painful death. And so where's the money? It's in banks.
So I would think, Danny, that you'd have to do quite a bit of research today if during these times to find out who has the money, or you're wasting your time, right?
Yeah, well, I think you got to. There's research, but also some of the research is calling people. But
Well, I meant research and prospecting for who actually has the money.
well, are you going to do research by phone, by calling phones, or or calling people on the phone, or going to see them, or
Yeah, when you take statistics, they'll tell you that the very minimum number of actual responses that you have to have is like 30. And so it may take you 350 to 500 phone calls to actually get somebody to have a conversation with you and get some legitimate feedback. So the more contacts you have, the higher validity your responses are. And so you can't just make, 100 calls, talk to 8 people and say, well, the market sucks. It's over. Throw in the towel.
Yep. Hey guys, can y'all hold just a minute? I'll be right back.
I mean, a famous book in the 90s was Millionaire Next Door. And that was based on hard research done for like Morgan Stanley or Goldman about how to reach this new wealth. And that's when they were shocked at what they found. That's why the book was popular. Talking about what these self-made millionaires, how they dealt with financial institutions. It was totally different.
So I think what I was trying to say was, I know that one of the areas that who has money is the middle to larger size service companies, and that do plumbing, electrical work. And so when I go and visit with those folks, I don't have to worry about generally them having problems to pay for consulting, because generally they're going to be busy because there's homes and there's businesses that need that service. And so I would focus on those type of industries before I just go look for a startup, or somebody just needs a channel, or somebody needs 3 videos. I'm going to go after the guy that actually wants to contract me for a year or two to work with them directly on their marketing. So that's what I meant by that. Who has the money?
So Herdy, while Danny's away, I'm doing a weekly email. Sometimes I get inundated by all the people I've subscribed to. And those people who don't open get another email the next morning. Too much, too little?
No, I'd be consistent on that and send it, because you'll catch somebody sooner or later that'll open it. I've been guilty of reading some of yours, and other ones I just don't get to till the next week, but I see them. So I'm one of these people, say, if these people have opted into you, you just keep going till they unsubscribe from you, because that way you're staying in front of them. Real important.
Danny told me about 3 or 4 years ago, if they unsubscribed, they were never going to help you anyway. So now I applaud those people for unsubscribing.
Yeah, you want them off your list if they're not gonna open.
So I'll tell you what I'm doing, just not quite a side note, but I did sign up for LinkedIn Pro, and I went back and did a profile. And I didn't realize this when I signed up, but when you put a profile in there, you get your initial list, and then LinkedIn keeps scraping names for you, and they'll pull up and show up in that. And so I hit those folks that hit my profile for a connection request. And then within a couple of weeks, they'll go on that email list. And so I've got like 1,400 names in that list. VP sales, VP business development.
Perfect.
I'm just curious of the guys in this room. Have you ever bought anything due to unsolicited email? Ever?
Yeah.
Depends on what it is.
I have on the techie side, Tom. Like if somebody's got like I get a lot of stuff for powered USB ports for extra, extensions, stuff like that. I've gotten deals hit me up that I didn't subscribe to. I went and checked them out first to make sure I wasn't being fished, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Tom, it's an icebreaker effort. And then, they can always opt out if they don't want it. And then eventually when you get them on the phone, they'll go, "Oh, I know you." Or they'll say,
Okay.
I feel like I know you because I've been reading your stuff for 6 months or a year. And so it takes a lot of persistence and a thick skin. I'm following a guy named Anthony Inanero, who's a sales guy. And he said he's a really smart guy. He's got a law degree and all that kind of stuff. But he said that his very first sales manager looked in my eye and said, "Okay, I want you to remember this. It's not about you."
Yeah. I bought $125,000 piece of software from a guy one time who I almost said his name. He pursued me for about a year. He got my name off of a list of attendees at a mortgage banker convention and started calling on me. And actually not 2 years, 3 years. He called on me for 3 years. And then one day I called him up and I said, let's talk. And but I think it depends on, what it is. If she'd have come back, I'd have bought probably Verizon Wireless from a door knocker about a week ago. She knocked on my door and said, had her ID and she's with Verizon Wireless and she was going door to door selling Verizon Wireless. I was getting ready to eat supper and was right in the middle of a SEAL team TV show, and I told her,
you gotta have your qualification. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I told her to come back. I said, if you see both of those white vehicles, I'm here, and I haven't bought from her yet. So some of it though is a little bit ridiculous with the emails that I get. But I like it when they have that unsubscribe right at the top of the email, and I don't have to go looking for it. Interesting, back to something somebody said. He says here, an IQP. Never seen that term. An ideal qualified prospect on page 62, defining your right now, all cap, ideal qualified prospect. This profile might be very, very different from the prospect you targeted before the crisis. Be prepared to pivot and move to new markets and industry verticals. Then he gives a profile. Your crisis IQP is a profile of the prospects most likely to do business with you now based on the following data points. And so he should give some different data points, but be prepared to redefine your ideal qualified prospect, maybe multiple times as things change over the course of the crisis. Talking with Jeff Kickle this morning, Paul, you were on there and on that call, and I asked about layoffs, and I said, anybody see anything about layoffs? And evidently the layoffs are really starting to under the radar, maybe under my radar. There's a lot of layoffs starting to happen in the non-financial world.
I was going to say, they started a few weeks ago with y'all, right?
Oh, months ago. We've already lost 40% of our what a sales guy calls the support side of the business.
Oh,
from admins to processors, underwriters, closers, funders. It's 40% of all the support staff is about 2/3 of the mortgage industry. Okay, support staff,
Wow.
non-loan officer, salespeople.
Danny, Angel Oak Retail got bought out last week.
Have they started laying off yet?
Not yet. Supposedly, the majority of the staff is headed over to cross country, but the owner of Angel Oak Retail, or of the owner of Angel Oak, sold the retail division for a rumor of $20,000.
He just had to put a figure on it.
Get it off my books.
Wow.
So sold the liabilities.
Yeah, that's
Pretty
exactly
good deal.
what he
Got
did.
20,000 for the liabilities. Pretty
Yeah,
smart move.
yeah, yeah.
So Danny, so back to that prospecting and ideal qualified prospect. So people are shocked when they meet with me for the first time on consulting, and I tell them that, what are you interested in really trying to do? Are you interested in bringing in clients eventually, long term, or brand, and or do you want to hear what I have to say and after we talk about it? And so I look at the prospecting as two different fields. You've got yourself knocking on doors, right? Which, by the way, I tell my clients there is no replacement for face-to-face meetings with clients. Even though I work in the social media arena, right? I build my brand on, people don't know this, but my brand's really small on social media, but that's where I build my brand. And you have to remember, people are prospecting you. So you have two different places you have to prospect, right? You have to prospect by shaking hands, and then you have to prospect by meeting people with a handshake that are doing searches on Google and stuff like that, unless you're Paul and you're rich and you have so much insurance you can't stand it. So outside of Paul, the rest of us.
I still network. I just market. I call people. I'm not a bitch. No way. Not even close.
My point is that there's fields that don't need it, because Paul's an example of somebody that goes and gets them all the time, and the insurance is a numbers game, right? So if he was just doing social media, he would fail. He would fail if he just did social media.
Yeah.
So my point is, a lot of people need to prospect, be thinking about, how do I reach a new audience that is prospecting me, but what do I need to do to keep myself in the game? And so I'm sorry I'm chiming too much on this, but this is right up my alley, because this is how I have to train my clients to be thinking. You can sit all day at your desk and post, but if you're not shaking hands and you don't go out and meet people, you're wasting your time.
Yeah. I mean, guys, that's that's a, yeah. If anyway, I can go down 2 or 3 paths there. I wonder what
Path one.
some salespeople do. I haven't been to the mall just to walk around, hand out business cards, to have just find somebody to talk to. I used to do that. I tried to do it about 6 years ago, went to the mall, and that was kind of like, oh my gosh. Hey, I just asked Dan how many calls he had today. And today he had 288 dials, made 23 contacts, got 2 people's emails. The fact that his goal in that is to get an email address. Now he is making very random calls. He's calling into he has a dialer that's dialing into a geocode database. So it might be a phone number that's somehow or another tagged to somebody in Cedar Park, but they might have moved to New York City. But it's still tagged because they started off in there. I'm looking back through some others, but there's some days he made, I know 388. they're doing better right now. And they were doing about 2 months ago. 2 months ago, he was up over 400. Here's 348, 11 conversations, 2 emails. A few days ago, 361, 9 conversations, 1 email. So he's just sticking with his plan. And but yet most of his business, he will tell you, comes off of his YouTube channel. But he still does that. And I asked him, thinking I knew the answer, Dan, why do you do those calls every morning? He said, what else am I going to do for 3 or 4 hours?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So,
Well, I mean, Danny, I mean, you know, I talked about this briefly, but I mean, I'm really looking at all the networking I do, and the quality of what I see face-to-face networking is just not what it was before COVID.
yeah,
It's,
Absolutely.
I don't know how to explain it. It's you know, it's not my intuition, but just people are not engaged in the same way. That would be my way of saying it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, there are people there, but it's almost like they're numb.
yeah. Well, I will tell
Maybe-
you, yeah, I would tell you that yes, what I'm surprised about, the face-to-face is different. What I'm surprised about is my follow-throughs. When I send you an email, Tom, it's great meeting you. Hope to see you again soon. Have a great week. And I just go through those, and I've started doing that just once a week on Mondays. And on Monday mornings, I send those emails to everybody I met last week. It was great meeting you last week. Have a great week. I normally, before COVID, would get 1 in 10 would reply back.
Okay.
I'm getting half now.
Yeah.
People replying back, say, "Hey, Danny, good meeting you also," and then making a comment. And I'm kind of like, really, and really surprised about that.
Yeah, I try to get one out by the next morning if I can, or sooner, so that I kind of reinforce. And it's actually rare people even respond.
Yeah.
And before I got pretty good response rate because people care that you care. And I'm not sending out as you go, okay, I've got to do this. I mean, if I took the time to talk to them, I want to make a connection. But it's not there.
Yeah. So I get a good response out of Red Horn.
That's an interesting one because Hurdy and I had a short conversation. Thank you, Hurdy. Before this, you know, I know that I'm much more specific about the group I need, and I don't know that I'm finding that at Red Horn. I like the people. There's some good conversation, but you know, I need people that have already committed to planning. I don't really have the time to get them to, you know, learn that it's good. And so if there's a lot of do-it-yourselfers at Red Horn.
Yeah.
And they're clearly, they got it. They can Google it.
Yeah.
And so they'll never be a client.
Yeah.
Until they get past that.
Yeah.
It's okay. I can't pursue them, you know?
Yeah. Well, I've met a few people that just kind of come in there, and I'm noticing how many people have only been to Red Horn once, and I happen to have met them, and then they don't come back again. And but I've got a couple people that responded to me this morning from yesterday that I met last week, and of course, what I know is that those people there they're likely not a good client, but are they a good referral source? And that's what I'm asking about. you're playing that long game there. But Austin, you said your networking is different than what it was pre-COVID.
Yeah, I mean,
what you're finding
pre-COVID, I was all over the place, and you had to sort through some of the weeds, and like for instance, Able, a lot of good networking, not a lot of business, but there were some of the smaller groups I wouldn't think that would do too well turned out to be great, but just seeing what's out there right now. I mean, Tony and I were talking about this the other day. It's just there isn't anything quality, and what I'm finding is a lot of those quality networking groups are now have gone to invite only, and so they're not on a public forum like Facebook or Eventbrite or Meetup.com, whatever. You've got to know somebody who can get you in there.
Yeah, well, I would suggest having coffee. Tom, are you on Austin? Are you guys on Artie's list, private list?
I think
I need to get reconnected with Artie.
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
now
Tom?
that I'm networking again, I need to get back on his list.
Yeah. How about you, Tom?
I get emails from him, and I've seen him at the West Austin stuff. Haven't been in a couple of months, but I've seen him there. Yeah.
Yeah. Reach out to Artie and have coffee with him. He moves in some areas with some people that are we got some good business depth. Let's say that. On a side note, Paul, was that a black cat that you have in your lap?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she keeps jumping in my lap.
That's all right.
Beautiful. Ready.
She actually we adopted her 11-11-11 for my garden center at Walmart when I worked at Slugger.
That's awesome.
So 11-11-11, but she's probably born in July, so she's 11 and a half years old or something. Yeah. She keeps wanting to jump in my lap.
So, Danny, the other area that you were talking about briefly that is a kind of a buzzword in my industry, and if you use it right, it's a big word that's used wrong, but in a lot of cases, it's if you understand how to use it, and that is to find within your vertical markets your influences and really pay attention to those 5 or 6 or 7 people. So one of the ways to find those is to see who's always looking at your stuff online and liking your stuff, and then getting that list put together and then directly working back to them, because if they're doing that, then that means they're paying attention. And if they're paying attention, then they need to become an influencer that you can use for a referral base, right? A lot of people miss that trick. Hold it. A lot of people miss that. I don't use the word trick, but I just did. I didn't mean to. So a lot of people miss that by just glossing over in your social media. So how many people on here actually click, how many people liked a post, and then look to see who was on that list and wrote that list down, and then sent them a thank you email saying, I saw you, noticed you liked one of my posts on my business support center. Tell me how that's working for you. And you'd be surprised how many people actually get back with me on that for that recognition. So that influencers can be a big prospecting tool. Huge.
Yeah.
Ernie, I did not invent this term, but years ago I met this, curmudgeon of a CPA that I worked with a little bit, and he called it friends of firm. It's this person, a friend of the firm, has something to do with what they do. They sent them influential people to work with. So that was his buzzword, friends of firm. You see it FOF on a piece of paper, like that meant take care of them.
Yeah.
So there are people that buy into what you do and go, they're the man, they're the lady. And that can go a long way, because they're not selling anything in the process. They're just trying to do good. That's really powerful. It's usually a short list, but I'll give an example. Jeff Baker. I get a call that Jeff Baker recommended that I talk to you, Tom. Boom. I'm going to change my schedule.
Yeah.
Because it's a real deal.
Right. The Malcolm Gladwell in his book Tipping Point defines a person called a connector. That's what that would be. Friends of firm. Chapter 19, 7 steps to build an effective prospecting sequences. Now, Herdy, this gets into some of what you were just talking about. A prospecting sequence is an intentional series of prospecting touches, cross-leveraging multiple communication channels that improves the probability that you compel your prospect to engage with the right message through the right channel at the right time. And some of my highlights is when prospects don't know you, it's much harder to get them to engage. One way to overcome aversion is become more familiar to your prospect. The more the prospect hears and sees your name, the more familiar you become to them, and more likely they are to engage. Gary, some of what you were saying, Herdy. Our whole Stop Wasting Handshakes program is built in part around this. Now, Blount here is much more about making a phone call. I maybe it's a sheepish way, but I do an email and a couple other things before I ever call them on the phone. And so I want them to get to know me. It's why I wait a period of time before I send them that email. If what I'm trying to do is to use one of Herdy's terms, I'm trying to trick.
Hey, stop that.
What I'm trying to do is that when they are ready for a mortgage, or as I'm really branding myself around a reverse mortgage, and they hear somebody say reverse mortgage, a week, a month, a year from now, I want them to go, wait a minute, why am I thinking about what is that guy's name? Danny Smith. It's the whole thing around the subconscious, and it's not about repetition. It's about spaced repetition. And recommend a book called Know, Can, Do. KNOW, Can, Do. What's the guy who wrote Move My Cheese, the 1 Minute Manager? Blanchard. Yeah, Blanchard and Paul Meyer and another guy named, I think, Rule wrote the book Know, Can, Do. Great book about, and they specifically say that it's not a great book about repetition. It's a great book about spaced repetition. And it's that over time. It's also the fact that, what is it, Austin? 80% of all sales happen after the 8th touch.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Danny, when that's a great example you gave about reverse mortgage. But do you find yourself still in this environment as you're kind of switched your focus to explain you're not that guy selling that bad reverse mortgage? Are you faced with that?
I've had a couple people. I had a guy, Chris, at church. Chris, and this guy's an equity trader. He says, so Danny, how is with consumer debt going up because people are spending more money, they're putting it on credit cards, that hurts the mortgage business. Savings are going down even more rapidly than debt's going up. That hurts the mortgage business. What are you doing about that? And I said, well, I'm just refocusing more. I said, since I turned 62 almost 6 years ago, I've been intending to focus on reverse mortgages, and that's where I'm headed. That's what I'm doing on that, and help people tap into their equity to give them some income in their retirement. And he goes, a reverse mortgage, isn't that where a bank buys the house from you and lets you live in it? And I said no. It's where the bank loans you money and you don't have to make a payment until you leave the house. And and there are some bad apples that were out there. It's don't know that there's somebody's always going to figure out how to scam. I'm surprised how many scams there are in just regular mortgages and people going to jail still with all the compliance that we've got right now. But person in their counseling session with the disinterested third parties they pick, in my disclosures and the closing papers, they all sign that everybody signs. They sign 3 different times. They're acknowledging that they're not going to go buy annuities with any money that they get, and that was the biggest scam back then.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so yeah, that is a downside. That is a downside, and target list. Get dialed in to your IQP, your industry vertical, geography, decision-making roles. The better, more targeted your list, the better your prospecting outcomes. Goes to, somebody said, and Mike, how about you? What's your, how's your business in this market that we're in? Are you still there, Mike?
Muted. There. I am struggling. And what's funny is that I almost finished this book, and it's been very helpful, and it's opened my eyes a lot. Because it says don't get discouraged, and you're gonna get no's. I get really discouraged because the thing is I have a working relationship with a lot of my customers, right? And I would have thought that being that I have that working relationship and they know my level of quality and everything, I thought it'd be a shoe in, right? So I got a little too comfortable. So I was really surprised, but I'm working really hard. Well, this morning I had a failure. We got a over $100,000 PO, which I was excited about, and then part of my team didn't feel comfortable building the parts. And sometimes the best RFQs a no, right? Sometimes it's a no. It'll help us, but I mean, I was looking at the number, $120,000 PO. We could really use it right now. But at the end, for 40 parts, I mean, that's significant. But like they said, sometimes the best PO, I mean, the best RFQs, no quote, because we could have got ourselves in a mess.
Yeah.
But as an owner of the business, it's really hard because you want the best. You want to provide. Now we're dried up, so they're like, get us work. But then I get bad lead times and I get pricing too high. So in order to be competitive in my business, I have to be faster and cheaper than all my competition. And there's a lot of competition out there, but quality is number one. And normally quality would sell more than anything else. That's not the case in a lot of times.
I mean, so Mike, you're right. I mean, let me just say, you're right on track. I mean, I've already mentioned this group. My first client was an architect, and assigned his office, good, fast, cheap. Pick 2. You don't get all 3. What do you want?
Race cars need parts.
Yeah.
Oh, we built some.
If they don't care about quality, I don't think they're a customer for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard to say no, but they're not a customer.
Yep. So that's where the struggle's at. You got a bunch of people in roles and that have roles and responsibility that don't know the product. You got a bunch of people out there buying product that don't know what they're buying, and that really hurts everybody in the industry because they're just looking at numbers. Right. You got a bunch of number crunchers.
Yeah, and that's where it comes around to education. I mean, what Tom was asking me a while ago is I am spending a lot of time educating people on what reverse mortgages are, what they're not. With you, Mike, it's such an education process. Just now, Mike, are you welding?
No, I'm selling machine parts. My core competencies, welding and real estate, right? but now I'm doing a little bit of everything. I'm doing the machine components that we used to weld. I'm now selling those machine components.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So speaking of reverse, Danny. So one of the things to help market yourself is to tell people what you don't do.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And very few people spend the time when they're doing videos and stuff to tell people what they don't do.
Yeah. I am focusing on looking for people instead of educating people on reverses. I'm looking for people that know what reverses are and are interested in them. And so, and although, I do have a PowerPoint over here that I have put together that does talk about a little bit of what reverse mortgage is not and who it is not for, like somebody that's wants to use anyway. Go into that another time, but something else. But that is a good point. I might put that. I might emphasize a few more things in there for a class I've got coming up.
And for you guys that do mortgages, how do you get you have so much competition out there with the internet, with the, what's the name of that one, Rocket Mortgage or whatever, who's offering 1% off your rate for a year. I mean, how do they even do that? Because it's a federal guided, I mean, how could they do that? It's a good sales pitch. Like my biggest competitor, so yours would be Rocket Mortgage, mine would be Zillow and realtor.com and everything, because I get all these customers and they say, well, I found this house on Zillow. Why didn't you show me this one? Or why didn't you show me this house on realtor.com? It's only 200,000. Are you trying to make more money on me? Like, no, that house doesn't exist.
Yeah. And, I'm not naive to think that Rocket is not my competitor, but my biggest competitor is, the other local loan officer here in Austin.
Oh, okay. Well, like my competitors, other realtors.
Yeah. And so it's such a relationship business.
Yeah.
Where I get my referrals, I have relationships. Loan I closed yesterday was a relationship that I started 15, 16 years ago and have not gotten a loan from him. And I've gotten a few referrals, but I've not closed a loan with him in 10 years.
See, I have the same thing. My customers come back, and there's people I haven't dealt with in 5 to 10 years as well.
Yeah. So just staying engaged with him, making a phone call and such. Multi-channel prospecting approach improves probability that you meet prospects where they are and how they prefer to communicate. Therefore, it is crucial to choose the right set of channels for each targeted list. I mean, I know people that Mike and I know Rob. Rob will not respond to text.
He will not.
About a year ago, I said, show me how many texts you have unanswered on your phone. He laughed and he wouldn't do it at first. I said, seriously, show me. It's over 10,000 unanswered texts. He just won't do it. It's hidden down in his phone. He has to see something pop up and want to respond. And so
that squirrel comment in this book?
Yeah.
That's the first person I thought about was Rob Miso, because he saw it behind his back. Everybody would play around and say squirrel, and like he would lose. But it was interesting in this book, because if you can't sell him in the first couple sentences, then his attention goes somewhere else.
Yep.
So I was going to call him and have that conversation with him. Like, I want to be a squirrel.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have that same ADHD as well. So I go off on tangents all the time.
And that's a guy that's highly, highly, highly successful.
Yes.
And he says, if you're more comfortable with a particular channel, shake yourself out of that comfort zone. The cross-channel approach is crucial to bending statistical probability in your favor that prospects engage. Now, I will tell you that Rob would, if it meant a sale, if it meant a good client in selling, he'd pay attention to that person's text.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no doubt about that. Here he talks about cadence. I think Austin and I refer to this more as a rhythm. get into a rhythm. Though cadence is a bad bad term. If you're a runner, there are actually little things the size of a little clip-on, actually a little bigger than a watch face, that you can set a cadence to your running as to how many steps you're making at a time, and to help you become a better runner. The ultimate objective of a prospecting sequence is to engage a prospect in a conversation. The big mistake that salespeople make is starting sequences with, I don't know what that term is, channel like email, rather than a synchronous, whatever channel like the phone. Yeah, and see, and I start mine with email. I want somebody to go, "Who is this?" And I fix my phone where that with my signature that doesn't have my picture on it, so that when I send somebody an email, I want them to click on my LinkedIn profile. Who is Danny? What does he look like? And they go there and look at me, so that I get a little bit of double whammy for my buck right there.
So Danny, have you ever asked these potential clients, when you pick up their first card and you hit them on their first email, where their email goes? Does it go to spam, or does it show up in their inbox? Have you ever asked them that?
I have not. I've had this conversation with some people on the group emails and stuff. Well, I know a lot of that goes into spam.
Yeah.
I've got an email getting ready to go out. You guys are going to get it, and it's just a it's just an email. It's just something I'm sending out. So you guys can let me know what you think about it. Guys, it's time. He talks here about touches. The combinations are endless. There's no one size fits all. The duration. He talks about durations. Austin, why don't you talk about duration real quick? I assume you're reworking some of your 8-step. What are you doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on the 8-step at night, but ultimately, if it's a real estate agent that comes through one of our classes, I will touch or reach out to that agent 8 times in various forms or fashion, in 8 times in 23 days.
So that's pretty rapid.
Yeah.
So that would be a massive positioning, not a nurturing thing. Okay.
Yeah, it is. What?
You're automating that, Austin? Is it all automated?
Not yet. I'm working. Our new CRM is based off of the Salesforce platform, and so getting that to work and do exactly how I want it to is a little bit cumbersome. I mean, I was on it for 2 hours last night until about 10 o'clock, and I didn't even get a full step done. So, but I will probably have something very similar for people that I meet networking. And then I have not even started drawing up the follow-through process for clients.